Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving deep into a true classic, Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird.
It's one of those books you want to talk about.
Absolutely. We're going way beyond the surface on this one. You wanted to unpack those big themes, the cultural impact, all of it.
And there's a lot to unpack. It really opens up these huge discussions about justice, about race, about childhood in the American South. And it's still relevant even decades after it was published.
Okay, so to really dig into this, we've got articles, analyses, a mountain of them. It's amazing how much this one book has sparked.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
One thing that struck me just starting out was from this piece on Southern literature. Lee really doesn't shy away from how complex life in the South was back then, during the 1930s, does she?
No, not at all. And it's really clever how she uses Scout's point of view, that childlike perspective. You know, we're experiencing the heat, the gossip, even the mystery surrounding Boo Radley, all through her eyes.
It's like stepping back in time, almost.
Exactly.
You mentioned Boo Radley, what a character. The Wikipedia article called him the embodiment of Southern Gothic. What does that even mean?
Oh, Southern Gothic, where the sweet tea's always got a little something extra in it, right?
What?
Like, it's all those eerie elements, those hints of decay, this sense that under the surface of this very polite society, something isn't quite right.
I see.
So Boo Radley, with all the rumors and whispers surrounding him, he's like a walking ghost story for these kids.
He kind of represents that fear of the unknown.
Right, absolutely. He's this recluse, lives in the shadows, literally. His past is this mystery.
Right.
But as you get deeper into the story, you realize he's not just this figure, this shadow. He's capable of real kindness, real compassion.
It's that peeling back the layers, realizing things aren't black and white.
Yeah.
That's what makes it so compelling. Speaking of black and white, let's talk about the trial of Tom Robinson.
That trial, it's like holding a mirror up to the South, to those racial injustices of the time.
It's such a powerful part of the book.
You can't ignore those parallels to real-life cases either. Innocent black men accused because of their race.
And Lee doesn't sugarcoat any of it.
No.
She shows how deep those prejudices ran in Maycomb and the devastating consequences.
And this is where that symbol of the mockingbird becomes really powerful. In this one paper about literary symbolism, it argues that Lee deliberately chose this specific bird because of its song. You know, mockingbirds, they don't destroy crops or anything. They just make these beautiful songs.
So harming one is like, I don't know, like crushing something innocent for no reason.
Exactly. And Lee actually makes that connection very clear when Atticus tells Scout it's a sin to kill a mockingbird.
Right.
He's not just talking about birds. He's talking about the injustice done to those who are vulnerable, those who society pushes down.
And that's what Atticus is fighting against.
Absolutely.
He's like the embodiment of doing what's right, standing up for Tom even when people in his own community threaten him.
He's incredibly interesting to think about, Atticus.
Yeah.
Well, he's this figure of integrity, this lawyer who believes in reason, in justice.
Right.
But at the same time, and this is something an article pointed out, he's a product of his time.
Oh, so.
He has these progressive views on race, for sure, but he's still living within the reality of the Jim Crow South. He understands the social order, even if he disagrees with it.
That is interesting. So he's not this perfect hero. He's flawed.
Yeah.
But that makes his choices more impactful, wouldn't you say?
I think so, definitely. That complexity is one of the things that makes To Kill a Mockingbird such a rich, lasting work. It's not giving you easy answers. It's making you really think about morality, about what justice even means.
And it's all happening in this small southern town with these really unique characters and traditions. Tell me more about how Lee portrays childhood in Maycomb, because it's so vivid.
Oh, it's just idyllic in a way, you know? Full of fireflies, those long summer days, that innocence, that curiosity. Lee captures it perfectly. Remember Scout, how fascinated she is by Boo Radley? Or those games they play, like they're mimicking the adult world without really getting it yet?
That's those little details that make it relatable, even if you didn't grow up in the South back then. But then those childhood adventures, they kind of clash with how harsh the adult world is, especially when you get to the trial.
It's true. The contrast is stark. Lee uses Scout's perspective to show us how different things look to a child, their idea of justice compared to the system, which is really flawed, that the adults are stuck with. Like Scout and Jem, they're so sure Atticus is going to win because to them he's the best, you know? Their faith in him, it's heartwarming, but it shows how innocent they are about how prejudice can really warp things, even the law, which is supposed to be fair.
And that disillusionment, realizing the world isn't fair or kind.
Yeah.
That's a big part of Scout growing up in the book, isn't it?
It's huge. Losing that innocence, realizing things aren't what you thought, it's part of what it means to grow up. But it's also through those experiences that Scout learns to empathize, to understand that the world is messy, complicated.
And she's not alone in that, right?
Yeah.
Atticus guides her. But there are also those strong women, Calpurnia and Miss Maudie.
Yeah.
What did you make of their roles in her life?
Oh, they're so important. Society at the time, it pushed women to the side, but these two, they're strong, they're wise.
Totally.
Calpurnia, she's firm with Scout, but loving, teaches her how to navigate different worlds. And Ms. Maudie, she's sharp, independent, offers a whole different view on life in Macomb.
You call them, what was it, pillars of strength, right?
Yeah.
That makes me think about courage, how Lee shows us different types of it throughout the book. We talked about Atticus making a moral stand, but what about other characters?
Oh, good point. Courage isn't always this big, loud thing. Remember Mrs. Dubose?
The morphine addict, right?
Yes. Atticus makes Jem read to her, remember? Yeah. Now, she's not likable at all, but she wants to beat her addiction before she dies. And that takes an incredible amount of inner strength.
I remember that part. It's like a small thing in the book, but it sticks with you.
Exactly. Lee is so skillful, she can give even the smaller characters these layers. With Mrs. Dubose, we see courage can be quiet, even painful, but just as important.
It's like Lee wants us to find our own kind of courage in these different characters.
Yes. Like she's saying, look, this is human nature. Anyone can be brave, resilient, even when things are tough. And it's not just about individual courage either. Lee makes us think about what it takes to stand up for what's right, even if it means going against everyone else, risking everything.
That challenge, to do what's right, that's maybe why the book still matters so much today. It's not just about the past, it's about the fight for justice and equality, even now.
I agree. It forces us to look at our own biases. How do we contribute to prejudice? How can we make the world a better, kinder place?
Yeah. It's powerful. We do have to acknowledge, though, To Kill a Mockingbird has been criticized. Some say it simplifies race relations or doesn't truly condemn racism.
That's fair. It was written in a specific time in America, and that context is reflected in how race is dealt with. Lee herself even said that the book was, and I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially her attempt to explain a historical trial, the Scottsboro Boys, to her young niece.
She knew she had limits to what she could understand, which is important. It's on us to read critically, look at strengths and weaknesses, see that these are complex issues. But even with the criticisms, you can't deny its impact on readers generation after generation.
It's true. To Kill a Mockingbird, it started so many conversations about race, justice, being human. There's the movie, it's taught in schools, and people still connect with it.
And speaking of connecting,
Yeah.
that ending. People debate that ending all the time. Hopeful, too simple, unrealistic. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like it circles back, you know? Well, we begin with Scout and Jem and their idea of Boo Radley, this idealized version.
Right.
And then at the end, the truth comes out. All those childhood notions are kind of shattered.
But there's also, I don't know, something kind of soft, gentle about it.
Oh, for sure. Boo, this recluse, suddenly he's the hero, saving the kids from Bob Ewell.
Right.
Like Lee's saying, even someone who seems like a monster to other people, they can have good in them, humanity.
And Scout,
Yeah.
she gets it, which is amazing when you think about how far she's come.
Yeah.
She knows that if they tell everyone what Boo did,
Yeah.
it'd be like hurting him.
Yeah.
It's that Mockingbird idea again.
Exactly. It shows how much she's grown up. She starts as this impulsive kid, sometimes prejudiced herself.
Yeah.
But now she can see from other people's perspective. She understands things are complicated. Good, bad.
Huh.
It's not so simple. And she's learned how to care, to have empathy.
And that's really what the book is about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Empathy. Challenging what you believe, even if it's hard. Doing the right thing.
I think so. And it's not just for the South or even for that time period. These are things we all deal with, no matter who you are, where you come from.
Lee takes us right inside that little town, Macomb and Arrow. It's like what we see there about being good to each other, about trying to understand. Those are universal things. That's why we're still talking about this book.
It's timeless. Like the best stories are, it stays with you, makes you question things, reminds us that seeking justice, equality, it's a journey, not an end point.
It really makes you wonder, if you were in Macomb back then,
Yeah.
would you do what's right? Would you stand with Atticus? Something to think about.
And that is it for our deep dive into To Kill a Mockingbird. We hope you learned something new and have lots to ponder. Thanks for listening.